Well, shall we go ahead and get started? Sounds like
I think
Julie
so.
may. Oh, Julie is joining us. Good. Well, I'll wait just a second. Julie's connecting, it looks like.
Hey, yeah, I'm on, still in my car, so I'll be home in a couple minutes and we'll get online as soon as I'm home.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Well, I'll go ahead and kick us off. I'm Greg Randolph, and this is the Committee on Primaries and Election Day Process. We may change that name to be a little more accurate, but that's what we're calling ourselves right now. And I just wanted to start us off with some quick introductions. So I'm just going to ask everyone to give your name, where you are, your location, like normally, not necessarily today, but like Chris, but where you normally work out of or live. And then just one fun fact about you that maybe your colleagues don't know. We can all read each other's bios and see all that stuff, but just wanted to hear some interesting things personally from each other. So Shara and Chris and I will start to give you guys a little time to think about your fun facts. But anyway, I'm Greg Randolph. I'm located in Carborough, North Carolina, in Orange County. And I have lived here, gosh, I think 25 years now, plus 10 years when I was in college in Orange County. And I've lived pretty much most of my life, except for 3-4 years in North Carolina. Grew up in the mountains. Fun fact about me, I was an intramural champion at the University of North Carolina, which I was very proud of. But the funny part is the sport I was intramural champion in was badminton. So anyway, I didn't even know they had badminton in intramurals, but I got involved in that and we won the campus intramural championship. So I will pass it to Shara to do her introduction.
Good morning. My name is Shara Blackburn. I live in Raleigh, Wake County. I'm actually from or grew up in Yancey County. I had been in Wake County since 1988 when I came down this way to go to law school and lived here ever since. Fun fact about me is I love to bake, but I go about it like a chemistry project. So I'll take a recipe and I'll redo it, revamp it until I think it's perfect. So my latest project is chocolate bourbon pecan pies. I have made, I think the most I've made in one Christmas season is about 42. So there you go. Love to bake.
Wow.
As you can imagine, I love the Great British Bake Off show.
That's great. Well, I'm Chris Cooper. I'm a professor at Western Carolina University. I live in Silva. Today I'm talking to you from the Grove Park parking lot, the Grove Park Inn. Trying to think, fun fact. So I mountain bike a lot in my spare time, and my colleagues probably know that, but to take the letter of the law in Greg's point, something they might not know. So 2007, I guess, I raced the Leadville 100, which is a 100-mile mountain bike race at Leadville, Colorado at altitude. And
wow.
Floyd Landis, who had won the Tour de France, raced that same year. But the difference between me and Floyd was, one, he was faster than me, and second, I was not busted for drugs. So there's my fun facts. And I'll pass to, I guess we're passing the hat around. I'll go to Rachel.
Hey everyone, I'm Rachel Capon. I am in Greensboro, North Carolina. I guess a fun fact about me, I grew up next door to Richard Petty. So that's a pretty fun fact. A lot of people don't know that, but used to see him in the grocery store all the time. Used to see him racing down the highway all the time. Still see him. We live a couple miles away from him now, but that is a pretty cool fact.
Wow.
And Rachel, do you want to pass it on to somebody? While you're doing that, actually, I was going to say we used to joke and call this bridge in Asheville, or going to Asheville, the Richard Petty Bridge, but now it really is the Richard Petty Bridge. They formally named it after him.
Nice. I will pass it to Julie.
What if you could? I'm just getting online. Okay, I guess I'm here.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Okay, that should be good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Eiselt. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I most recently served as Mayor Pro Tem on the Charlotte City Council, and I served on the council for 7 years, and then decided not to run again and work on things like this. And I originally, let's see, my fun fact is that I met my husband in a one-star hotel in Cairo, Egypt. And as I tell people, nobody looks good in a one-star hotel in Cairo, Egypt, but we got married and and he is good looking.
Oh, that's good. Do you want to pass it to someone else?
Oh, sure. Apologies. How about Kevin?
Hey, how are you guys doing? Great to hear so many people from the mountains of North Carolina in one of these meetings. I heard Yancey County mentioned, and Asheville and Pelowee. I was the sheriff of Avery County for 15 years and was past president of the North Carolina Sheriff's Association. I'm currently employed at the North Carolina Department of Labor, so I'm in my second childhood now. Fun fact, I have rappelled off the Grandfather Mountain Swinging Bridge before. So
Hope that was intentional.
it was. I worked with the rescue squad before I got into, right when I was getting into law enforcement. So we would, back then they had hang gliders that would go off of the Grandfather Mountain, and we would have to go pluck them off the side of the mountain regularly. So
Wow.
Great. I
This
think
was a great idea. This was a great idea to do fun facts.
yeah, last but not least is Tara.
Thank you. And you all have set the bar high on the fun facts, so I'll try my best. I am Tara Muller. I'm a policy attorney at Disability Rights North Carolina. I'm based in Raleigh, but I actually am originally from Asheville, so I sort of fit in with you guys a little bit. My fun fact is that before law school, I was an engineer at NC State and spent a summer working in a research lab actually in Asheville and got my forklift certificate. So I'm officially a certified forklift operator. Spent the whole summer operating forklift. So that's my claim to fame. But I agree, fun facts are interesting. I've enjoyed learning about you all. And I think I'm the last one, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh, I think so.
Great, that was fun. Well, let's turn it over to Chris. Chris will kind of do a little overview of the group's purpose and goals. And then Cheryl will talk about sort of our expectations and ground rules as a committee. Oh, Chris, I think you're muted. There we go.
Somebody had to be the one who had to be reminded. I just didn't think it'd be me today, so I apologize. And thanks, Craig, for teeing me up, Jim. Since I'm in the car, as you gathered, my computer's not at the ready like it normally would be. So yeah, obviously we're getting started a little late, but I don't think that's a real problem. What I think we're kind of hoping we can do today is to start to run down kind of the topics we're going to address. I think that's really the big thing that we need to get done today. I know when Shira's talking, she's going to let us know about schedule going forward and how if we want to meet. But I think the big thing is to narrow it down. So primaries and election day procedures is incredibly broad. And I'll just, the discussion that Greg and Shira and I had the other day, I think there's this sort of question about whether we're supposed to talk about primaries and election day processes, or we're supposed to talk about primaries and election day processes. And I think the answer to that is kind of key, right? Is this in general about primaries as one thing and then election day process another, or is it combined? And I think the way, and Sheer and Greg should jump in here, I think the way we were interpreting this, one is we can do whatever we want, as Bob Orr reminds us constantly. We are making this up as we go, so we get to decide. There are no rules, and we can use that to our advantage. But I do think even in Rachel hopefully will agree with this. She should, as always, disagree if I'm speaking out of school, but I feel like the steering committee really feels like we need a place to put some of these questions about about primaries separately. For example, right now we have a 30% runoff threshold in the state of North Carolina. As most of y'all know, it's one point it was 40% in North Carolina. It was 50% at one point, and there's still some debate about that. Like, what is the right number? And I don't come in with any preconceived notion. One, I don't want to be driving this conversation anyway. I view myself as a resource more than an advocate. But I think that's a really interesting question. There's some questions about if instant runoff voting or should come into play at all, and we had a discussion on where to put that as a committee, and I think we decided ours would be the one. And then I think Shira has some really smart thoughts about how to think through the process piece. So I think those should hopefully be on our agenda. The other thing we need to figure out as a committee is how we want to gauge public input. And so each committee we're trying, as you know, from other committees you're on, to engage the public in some way. That could be adding questions on a survey, or that could also be even some, like, I don't think we've done much like e-focus groups in a way. So I think there's a possibility for trying to call some people together on Zoom and just some average citizens and see if we can engage people that way. So as far as goals for today, I think it's not nailed down the full parameters of our conversation, but what we're going to talk about as a committee, and then how we're starting to think about gauging public opinion. So with that, I will pass to Shira, who I think is going to walk us through some logistics and the ground rules.
Yes, we had an agenda that was kind of set out for us in the beginning. So what I've done is taken that and kind of fleshed it out a little bit more as to how the process works on election day in general. And then as it comes up, talk about how the primary will differ. Rachel, were you able to get this outlined to everybody?
Yeah, I sent it out. Everyone should have received it.
I'm not sure if everyone has been able to look at it. It's kind of set out, actually, including runoffs as number 18, kind of got an outline of 18 topics. And underneath, a few of these topics, there'll be a little more explanation. And for instance, election day, the preparation for election day actually starts with all the training that the volunteers get. And volunteers is kind of a loose word because we are paid a little bit. I don't know if people know that, but we are volunteers. But there's required training for all of us. So that starts in, if you got an election, you've got a primary in March, your training starting in February. But for election day, that chief judge goes and picks up supplies, and those supplies include those ballots. So I thought we should have a topic in there for that, but thought we'd start with polling places, staffing, picking up the supplies, including those ballots, and setup day. This is all part of that election day process. And on Monday setup, that's where your disaster planning comes in. That's where we have to have the conversation with everyone else on our precinct team as to how we handle disasters in that particular area. Then you've got your election day. That's where you're going to talk about setting up that tabulator. And there's a process for that. And I believe this is across the state. You have your chief judge, which is the only person that is actually using the keys to open things up on that tabulator, and you've got a judge from each party. And normally that chief judge is of the party of the sitting governor. So these are things that I think we should be able to tell with the product that we give back from our committee. So then that's election day, opening the tabulator. We go on to opening the polls. What's that like? Checking in, that's your registration table. Then you got your ballot table. Under these topics, registration and ballot table, that's where I think we get in talking about the differences with the primary. So Chris, going back to, are we election day process, primary? I think we can be both, because that's where you're going to have a little caveat to explain the differences. So then we talk about casting the ballots, voter assistance. What does that look like? That actually looks like two different things. You got curbside, and you have the what used to be the Automark is now the express vote machine. Talk about secrecy and privacy, provisional ballots and the help table. Poll observers. We usually always have poll observers, especially on general elections. Then we talk about closing the polls, closing the tabulator. How is that vote counted? And then certification of results and canvass day. And then at the bottom, runoffs. So I'm thinking we assign these topics, and I can help direct people to information where they can get information concerning these topics. Greg, how do you feel about this? Chris?
Yeah, I'm just digesting it. And are we going to kind of like in the agenda, there's a list of like topics and approaches.
Right.
Are we going to kind of merge these? Is that the thinking, Shara? Sounds like it.
Yes.
And these would be our topics and focus.
Yeah, I kind of set them out so that we would be covering everything without missing anything. That I think I tried to make sure that everything that was listed from A to F on our agenda would actually get covered in this outline, but actually cover what is typical in an election day process.
And that's, I think that's great. And so I think what we're going to want to focus on, once everybody knows the process, this is such a great start, is just what do we think about the process, right? So I think part of what we're doing is, as a commission in general, is to educate, and part of it is to say, hey, what's working, what's not working, right? What are some, so just to lean on the same example again, like, is that runoff threshold the right one, or is that the wrong one? Like, we can definitely, we need at the end, I think, to come up with some recommendations, right? So the form in the end. So I think this is such a good place to get us started for everybody getting on the same page.
I agree, because I think at the end of going and fleshing out this process, we should be able at the end to have some suggestions based on our work. Because it's always something to be improved upon.
So just to be clear, Shara, you said you're going to assign these topics?
I'd say Greg and I can assign them, and Chris, unless, looking at this, if there's something in particular that someone wants,
What is the goal, though, of assigning the topics? What are you looking for in terms of outcomes?
Well,
from each individual and whatever topic they take.
I guess I would say researching and writing on a particular topic as to what the process is. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm kind of cheating, because I've got this to work with. And this is a great help. I probably could sit down and write the whole thing, but I don't think that's probably what was intended. Plus, this is from a Wake County perspective. You know, for instance, when it comes to precincts, the size of a precinct in Wake County geographically is much smaller. You get to a place like Yancey County, you may be driving 10 miles to your polling location. So, you know, those are things that we can talk about. Yeah, that wouldn't necessarily have that information. The only reason I have it is because I've talked to some people to see what it's like there. So I think those are some things that we can talk about. And, you know, I'm more than welcome to furnish information to each of y'all in, you know, taking on one of these outline topics. I'm trying to get permission from the Wake County Board of Election to get a PDF of these manuals that we use so that I can send them on to y'all as, you know, something that will assist in these topics. What our purpose is to educate the public, you know, a place where they can go and educate themselves about how elections are run in North Carolina. At least that's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, right? And I think the other, and that you're doing such a great job with that. I think the other piece, right, is for us as a group of smart people who don't get our bread buttered by the system, to be able to look at it and figure out what works and what doesn't, right? So definitely the education piece, but also, you know, I think like at least as important a part of our role is to say what works, what doesn't work. Yeah. I don't know, Greg, Rachel, I don't know but that's sort of my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. Maybe not any more than 2 cents.
Yeah, I think
You're right. I think you're right. I think probably adding right under runoff is probably the most critical part of the whole outline would be, you know, number 19. And basically, what have we learned?
And so if there are experts, so Julie, to your question too, like once we divide, if there's expertise, I don't think anybody was expect to be able to say, here's the expert we want to hear from. But if you say, hey, I'd really like to hear an expert on, I'm making this up, instant runoff voting, just to have somebody come in and say, what are the pros, what are the cons? And that's where I think the idea is if individual people can come back, and then that's where maybe I can come in and help and suggest, you know, line up some academics who study this kind of stuff, or Michael or Martha can also help out with the same thing.
Well, and that's why I asked because, and Rachel, feel free to chime in on this, but I'm also on the committee for counting votes, and I think we've met 3 times now. And so we're approaching it a little bit differently in terms of really just looking at maybe what's like highlighting what's not working or what seems to be problematic. We haven't really approached it as let's give a full background on the topic, presumably because there are places for voters to already get that, but maybe have, you know, we had election workers on from, what's the right term? From various areas, rural, urban, to identify already, you know, what might be going wrong with poll observers, because there's some overlap here, right?
Yes.
For us, poll observers, you know, the election day type activity. So that's why I'm just wondering from a consistency standpoint, what the desired outcomes are.
I appreciate your comments because I'm on election, the infrastructure, and I'm seeing some overlapping. So really in election day process, all I really think we should focus on is that tabulator, because that's the only, that tabulator is counting the votes on election day. And we can also talk about how that tabulator is opened and closed and how those counts get then transferred to the Board of Elections in each county. So, you know, honestly, once it goes to the county, I don't know what the process is. So, I mean, that's where I would love to hear something from another committee as to what happens then at these county boards of elections. But I think what we can focus on, we can just limit it to that tabulator, because really that's where everything starts and ends for a particular precinct. I think we're really talking about election day process from a precinct point of view.
It's a really good question, Julie, and I think what we what we're proposing here is kind of based on the successes of other committees that have gone before us, and a lot of them have used this approach. And Rachel said it's working pretty well, of sort of defining the topics and then assigning members to do the research. And I think both in terms of like what's the current process, and then maybe what are things that, getting into the things like aren't working well, and maybe recommendations or exploring best practices around things that could be done better, or a different way, a better way of doing them. So that's kind of I think the big question we're asking you guys. What do you think about that approach? As Chris said, we could have some experts come in and talk about a particular topic. If there's something, you guys will also have access to, you know, we can get the right people. Like if you have questions about the topic as you're working on it, you know, send those questions to Rachel and Chris and Sharon, myself, and we can either answer it, hopefully, or if not, find the answer through the entire committee. There's a lot of expertise, and then whatnot. But anyway, I guess that's the big question for you guys. What do you think about this approach of dividing and conquering, I guess, and having each one of us do research on a particular topic or two once we define those?
That makes sense.
You know, it was
How
my
about Tara
understanding.
and Kevin?
Yeah,
What do you
I
guys
think-
think?
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Tara.
I thank you for clarifying, for asking that clarifying question, Julie. I think it does make sense. And I think I would like to make sure we have the opportunity to, once we get that information and once it is broken down by category, that we are all able to weigh in on all of the parts, because you know, I think so many of us come from different backgrounds with different perspectives. So that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, and I'm in full agreement. I think that would be the best and wisest way to accomplish our goal, is to divide it up and then come back together, share everything that we've learned, and go forward from there.
Great.
Okay.
Then I guess part B to that question is, right now, as you look at the list, there's the list in the agenda. It's kind of one way of looking at it. There's some overlap, but then there's also the detailed election day process that Shara shared. We'll combine those after the meeting and get a kind of a uniform set. But do you guys see a topic that you're really interested in? Because we'd rather you be working on something that you're really, you know, interested in. We can assign, you know, the topics to folks, but we'd rather have you self-assign when you can, if you see something that's really appealing.
Personally, I would love to take runoff threshold, if nobody else wants that one, but if somebody else really feels strongly about that, that's okay. And I could probably look at the ones that overlap with our other committee. So either way.
just stepping in here, the steering committee had brought up bringing up ranked choice voting for this committee. And I know, Julie, you were really passionate about that, and you're in the counting votes committee, which is also covering that. So that may be a good topic for you to work on since you are in the other committee. You can kind of be that collaboration between the two.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And Rachel, you said it's right choice,
Ranked choice voting.
ranked choice. Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. I know what that is.
And I think if we put that in the context of instant runoff, right, we can really fit it into the primary umbrella.
Yeah, it's a little how you position is key, right? Because we don't have a choice at the moment to have ranked choice voting.
One thing that
And
caught my, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that caught my eye as we were looking at this list early on was the ballot journey. And Shara, I think that might include multiple topics.
Yes, it
Yeah,
will.
so, but that was a topic I would really like to work on. I just remember being struck by the variation from county to county. So I would love to be assigned to that topic,
Okay.
unless someone else is really chomping at the bit on that one.
So you would
Tara?
also take the ballot table, because that's going to be a big one. Those ballots sit there for the whole day on election day. The other thing is, people may not know this, but other than we're given an empty ballot box along with a set number of ballots on the primary. It's we get a certain number of Democrat ballots, certain number of Republican ballots, a certain number of Libertarian ballots, and any other party that is allowed to run. We're given a certain number of ballots and the express vote ballots. And it's on a piece of paper when we go to pick up those ballots. And then we have to sign it. Paper stays with the Board of Elections. And then that number is critical. Every one of those ballots is tracked. And then when it comes back to the end of the election day, which that brings up another thought, there is a part of the process, and this is a critical part. It's called the reconciliation form. And that has to get filled out, and that ballot number then is put on that reconciliation form, and then all these numbers are tracked, especially the number of ballots that went into that tabulator, the number of ballots that are remaining, any spoiled ballots, any provisional ballots. All these numbers are tracked on that reconciliation form. So then at the very end of that reconciliation form, these numbers have to balance with that number of ballots that was issued. So that may be something else, and I'd be glad to take on that topic because it's probably something critical here that I've left out. So that would probably be numbers between 16 and 17. So we'd renumber, so just put reconciliation form, and I'd be glad to take that. Because at the end of the day, this is it's to educate the public and to figure out what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and what can we make better. Is that, do we have it correct?
From my perspective, yes.
Okay.
And I think to Julie's point from before, I think we just want to make sure that we, or at least how I think I understood Julie's point before, just make sure that we have that part that last part in there too, right? Just to make sure we're doing some assessment. So it's description and it's assessment, and they want to make sure we don't fall short of the assessment part, or else to teach to the test. Once we have to fill out this thing at the end, it says what are our recommendations. We better make sure we have something
Right.
there. And then I think like the other point that was made before, that we're doing that as a committee, that it's not just individual people with their own pet ideas, but that we report back to our committee, make sure we're all on board, and then report back to the bigger commission.
Does tell you what, does everyone want to take some time to look at this and think about it? And then,
I can tell you right now, what jumps out at me is number 10, number 9 and 10, but especially number 10, which is the voter assistance. That's where folks with disabilities tend to get caught up and run into problems. The actual submission of the ballot and assistance from, especially this cycle with the observers and everything else.
okay.
I'm so glad you're on this commission. Like, that part of the election process, I think, just gets ignored so often. So to have somebody with their experience on here is just really cool.
Thanks. I'm glad
So
to be
voter
here.
assistance then, Tara, will be your category.
Yes, that would be great. And if you need another one, if you need me to cover another one, the one right before that, which is called number 9, casting ballots. But there may be others who are interested in that one too.
That should be short. That should be short and sweet.
They kind
Because
of go together. Yeah.
yeah, you know, you're putting it in the tabulator. I know that in Wake County we got all new tabulators because getting into this express vote for the hearing and sight those with those disabilities, it's now a different ballot. So, you know, how you take it from that machine then into the tabulator. I see kind of 3 areas to talk about with disabilities. You know, someone with some type of mental disability can ask for help from a family member or a poll worker. There's also curbside voting. How does that work? And then this express vote machine. How does that work? So those are 3 areas that I see in kind of your ballpark. And there may, you know, with your expertise, you may see more.
Yeah, I think you've hit most of them. The absentee ballots also, but in terms of the actual election process, I think for sure curbside voting, which you know, we do monitor as much as we can, and with, you know, the curbside voting, and try to get the word out about the ability to use curbside voting, but we still run into a lot of problems. And the same with the use of the accessible voting machine, and having staff adequately trained on those machines and making sure they're turned on, you know, all that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, one reason I didn't even mention absentee ballots in the election day process is because we are not allowed to accept them on election day. We don't even want them coming into the polling place. So I have figured out that that's going to be an area that one of the other committees will talk about, hopefully in depth, because it's an extremely important topic.
I would
I'm
say,
on that. I think I'm on a couple other subcommittees, and one of them is, I can't remember the name of it, but it's addressing that one, the absentee process. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be a whole committee in and of itself.
I would say just anecdotally, I've this primary also, I worked polls where there was no notification that people could vote curbside. And every time, you know, we volunteers at the polls end up saying, if somebody's getting out of the car in a wheelchair or something, we're like, stay there, we'll run in and get somebody for you. So just that process alone, I think, needs work. That even that they can pull up, you know, make that known as soon as they pull in.
You know, that's probably one of the things in terms of suggestions that we could do, because I know in Wake County, a notice went out about having to provide a photo ID this time around. Well, in that notice, they could have also given notice about curbside voting. And because my understanding is the person voting curbside has to be in some way disabled. The person driving can't vote, but the disabled person can. There's some nuances to that. And that would probably go into with Tara and voter assistance. But yeah, I think that's a great thing that we could put in suggestions at the end, because I don't think that is being done. I don't think enough people know about curbside voting.
Especially elderly people. It just doesn't have to be somebody disabled.
Right. Are you asking the question?
I'm saying in case it's not, clear in the language, that it just could be somebody who has mobility issues. They don't have to be
Right. Someone that just temporarily has a broken leg, is my understanding, they can use curbside.
And I think that goes to the cultural, the confusion that we run into all the time, which is, people who don't consider themselves to be disabled, maybe who are disabled but don't know they are, like the older adults especially fall in that category often, or somebody with a broken leg. They're officially, they are people, right? They're disabled, but they may not think of themselves that way. So I think you're right. It's good to remind people that that's available, however you decide to categorize yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes I would think you could look at the building and go, yeah, I can make it there. But then if it's on the other side of the school building or whatever, it's just too far. And you may not even realize that until you start the journey.
And even not just physical limitations, but like last cycle, we ran into a lot of people with immunity issues. They didn't want to be in crowded areas. If they were predisposed to getting sick and they didn't, feel like a mask would protect them adequately, or if they had mental illness and things like, really high anxiety in crowded areas, or especially now with all the observers and things that might be additional stress. So that kind of thing can qualify too.
And again, I think we need to make sure our laws, cover that, and that the public's educated about those things, because I think they're legitimate concerns. And, some of these polling places, they're not easy to access for some people. I've worked in a few that, there's quite a bit of walking to get in and out. Some places are very accessible, but what I'm saying is they're not all created equal. That's just I think that's just part of the beast with having the election day in all these different locations around the individual counties. So,
Kevin, I was wondering if anything spoke to you on this list. Is there anything that caught your eye that you would like to focus on, or you're open to just whatever?
I'm open to whatever. All of it's pretty interesting. So whatever somebody don't want, I'll take whatever is deemed necessary.
Okay. Thanks. It's good to have somebody like that. Can go anywhere.
You want to take poll observers? And I can send you some information on that.
Like I say, I'll take whatever you need me to take.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic, actually. Poll observers.
It's a great one for somebody with law enforcement experience too, I think, because there's all these questions about, what is permissible, what's not. So somebody's been head of the Sheriff's Association seems like a natural fit to me anyway.
Yeah, we've had to remove several people that thought they were poll observers before. So yeah. Yeah, it runs. I love election day when I was sheriff, man. It was like, oh man.
You were hopping.
Yes. See, our sheriff's office, and Yancey probably does the same thing. But a lot of the smaller sheriff's offices, we're the ones that take all the ballots out to the polling
Oh, wow.
places. We take all the stuff out there and deliver it to them in the morning.
See, this is something that I think is great information, because that's the difference. That's the difference in a smaller county versus a larger county.
Yeah, the Board of Elections in Avery County didn't have enough people and couldn't get everything, so we would always help them. And I don't know where they're still doing it. I've been retired for 2 years, but I don't, I would assume they're still doing it today. We always had one deputy sheriff that would go out and check all and take them the ballots to them to load up the machines in the morning.
Wow. I have learned something today.
So
Okay.
Rachel, I was wondering if we can assign your AI to the topic, or are we done now?
So I'm not sure
Your
whose
AI assistant.
AI thing that is.
Oh, I
but
thought
it
that
is
was
not,
yours.
It is not mine.
What's that?
Hopefully it's somebody's here. There's like
Is this
a automated.
Oh, you know something? This is where I know just enough technology to be dangerous. So somehow when I got onto Zoom on Thursday, this Read AI came up, and apparently it's recording our meetings, and it's almost like it's taking minutes
Yeah,
of our meetings.
I think it is from you, Shira, because after our last meeting, I got an email from your AI. So somehow it must be like a Zoom setting you have.
It is, but I don't know how I did it.
Well, Rachel might find those helpful. You could send them to her.
But I thought, oh, wow, it's almost like a secretary. But I wouldn't know how to access it.
Yeah, I got an
Well,
email too, like sending a summary of our meeting. That's interesting.
So do we want then for the Greg and Shira and I and Rachel, just to take what we've got here and try to get some tentative assignments out to folks that they could then horse trade if they want to or move around, but take that offline and do that? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, I
Let
think
me
that
rephrase. Okay.
I think that would be best.
I think that works. And what I was thinking about too, once we get everything assigned and we get everything, done, I would love to send our work product to a more rural county, let them look at it and comment on how, what's different about their process. And then a medium level county, something like, where Wilmington's based, and see how their process is different, so that we can maybe comment on that. Because based on what Kevin just said, it's obvious that people in smaller counties have a different perspective than those of us in larger counties. And I think we need to acknowledge that.
Yeah, that might feed into some of the discussion we were having about the need for public engagement. And maybe we can sort of incorporate that into our public engagement process.
Okay.
I think that's a really good one.
I think it's been a valuable meeting.
Yeah, I think we got through everything, which was ambitious.
This is great. So tentatively, we can work on schedules. Okay, let me be honest. We can have Rachel help us work on schedules. But as far as when we want to try to meet next, since we're it seems like most of the committee's been doing about once a month, since we're maybe a little bit behind maybe I would propose, if we want to think about maybe 3 weeks instead of 4, something to kind of jumpstart us a little, maybe even 2. I don't know if that's too soon for folks.
I
That
will
works for
say,
me.
so did the Friday meeting at 10:30, was it 10:15 is what we had it at? Is that
Yeah.
better for everyone? If we're doing like a recurring meeting? Because,
Fridays are my worst day.
Okay.
That's probably my worst day to have a meeting because a lot of times I'm doing travel on Fridays.
okay, is there a specific day that does work better?
Does Tuesday 10:15 work?
Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all those are great with me. And I'm only speaking for me, but Fridays is the only day that I really have any problem.
Same for, I have meetings all day Friday, so any other day is great.
Tuesday, 10:15.
Does that work for
Good for
everyone,
me.
Tuesday, 10:15?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Probably.
Not tomorrow, Tuesday, right?
No.
No.
Maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we try from?
Just
Yeah,
wanted to
what
make
if it-
sure.
What do we try for? What do we try for 2 weeks from tomorrow? So we'll jumpstart a little and get back in the tide with everybody. Does that make sense?
So we want to maybe plan for April 8th? April 9th, sorry. That would
My son's birthday. Nope. All right.
2 weeks is April 2nd.
April 2nd? Okay.
No.
Okay. So April 2nd, Tuesday, 10:15.
That works. So should we
And
have
then
our,
Shira and Greg and I'll be in touch with.
should we have done our work on our topics by that meeting? Is that the idea?
I don't think that's realistic. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a lot to ask.
Good answer.
But yeah, I
Yep.
think it's going to be a lot of work, probably more so for Shira and Chris and me to kind of like synthesize everything. We'll have to assign some members probably that aren't here, but
Yep.
kind of get at least a draft of the plan, and then maybe we can discuss that. We could do some horse trading, like Chris said, at the next meeting, and certainly you can start some preliminary if you're good with your topic. You know, you could certainly start some preliminary research on that.
Yeah,
And
I
it
mean,
could be that the 2 weeks from now meeting is shorter, right? It might just be, I mean, to me, it's just like, let's, Sharon, Greg and I'll have the plan. We'll get everybody to respond to the plan. And yeah, anybody who's done any work, great. But, you know, maybe it's just a quicker touch base rather than a full hour of hashing it out.
right.
Yeah, and then I think all of us have a little head start, so hopefully we can take at least a preliminary look at our topic and come with any questions we have or reservations. Maybe we'll be ready to horse trade. But if you do have time, I think it would be good to start looking and seeing if there's any big, like, oh no, I hadn't thought of this, that comes up as you're looking at your topic.
And if anyone wants to, sorry about that, Greg. If I was
No,
going
go
to say,
ahead.
if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can send you some information that I have available if it will just help you think about your topic.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I'm also thinking it would be helpful for us to send out to the group a draft of just sort of like, here's what we're asking you to do, you know, in your research. We want you to do bum, 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 you know, and just bullets, and we can talk about that next time as well.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Well, I think we've got a lot done in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Great job.
Anything else? Anything else, Rachel? That we
Diverse
should be?
interest.
So
I
I just
think
wanted to
that's-
say I will not be available for that next meeting. I'm out of town that week, but if it's okay with you all, I'll get somebody else from my team to cover me. That's all right. So just wanted to let you know we've got a couple other folks that can be here.
That sounds great. Okay.
Thank you. It's a good
I'm
meeting.
going to pull out of this Grove Park Inn parking lot. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good week. Bye.